Good morning, Year 7. Today we're going to be doing dot plots. So a dot plot uses a dot for each score. So every score you have is represented by a dot. We have to learn a few new terms here. Some of you may know them from primary school, but if you don't, we've got clusters. A cluster occurs where the scores are grouped or bunched together. So you might have lots of scores all together, and then there might be a few scattered somewhere else. We're looking for the bunches or the scores that are grouped together. For an outlier, so it's outlier, that's how you pronounce that, they're the scores that lie outside all the others. Okay, so an outlier is a really high score or a really low score that's nowhere near any of the others. So for instance, if we were doing a maths test and we had one boy that got 95 and everybody else got marks in the 60s and 70s, and then there might be a few other lower scores, but they're bunched together. So we're looking for the really high score of 95 that's nowhere near the others. That person is an outlier. That score is an outlier. And we would be looking for things like that if we were trying to grade classes. We would need that person to be going up to a higher class. Okay, so we're going to look at an example that we've got here. This dot plot's already given to you. So it says this dot plot shows the number of students in each class at Westvale Primary School. So down here you've got to read what it says on the bottom axis so you can understand the graph before we try and do any questions that are on it. So down the bottom here it says that these numbers from 18 up to 26 represent the number of students in the class. So we need to try and understand what it's talking about first. So this tells you that we have 18 students in a class. We've got one dot there. That means that we've got one class that has 18 students in it. This next one says 19 and we have two dots there. So we've got 19 students in the class and we have two dots. That means we have two classes that have got 19 students in them. Okay, so you need to try and understand what it's all about first. Now we're going to attempt the questions. So the first one says, how many students are in the smallest class? So what they're asking for is how many students. So we've underlined that in red. And we're focusing on the smallest class. So if these are the number of students in the class, this is the smallest class. It's only got 18 students in it. Okay? So that's the answer to that question. 18 students in a class is the smallest class. So I'm going to write 18 students. Okay, the next question says, how many classes have more than 20 students? So we want to tell them how many classes, but we're focusing on more than 20 students. So here's your 20. More than 20 is everything above that. Okay, so we are looking at all of those. We don't want to look at the 20 because it has to be more than 20. So all of these are more than 20. And we want to know how many classes have that many students in them. So this tells you you've got one class with 21 students. We have 4 classes with 22 students, etc. So we want to be adding up all these dots. So we're just going to count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So there are 16 classes that have more than 20 students in them. All right, the next question says we're going to complete this statement. Class sizes range from something to something. Well, you can see that the class sizes are the number of students in the class. This is our smallest class with 18 students, and it goes all the way up to 26 students. So that's what we're going to write. They go from 18 to 26. Okay, in D, it says what is the most common number of students in a class? So down here is the number of students in the class. The one that's the most common is this one, 25, because it's got more dots. There are 5 classes that have got 25 students. So we're going to write down 25 is the most common number of students. Okay, so for E, are there any outliers in this data? Data just refers to the scores. Here's all our scores. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. So we're looking for a dot that might be a long way above the others or a long way below the others. So you would normally have a gap before you saw that high score or a gap before you saw the low score. Here we don't see any spaces, so there isn't any outlier here. Some students think that this might be an outlier because there's only one class with 26 students in it, but there's a lot with 25 and that's just below it. So I would not call that an outlier. Similarly, down here, 18 students is still pretty close to the 19. We have no big space there, so I would say no, there's no outliers. Okay, and the last one says, how many classes are there at Westvale Primary School? Now, a lot of people get stuck on this sort of question in an exam. But you've got to think about what this is all about. Remember that this tells you that there's one class with 18 students, two classes with 19 students, three classes with 20 students. So these dots are all representing the classes at the school. So we just got to count up all the dots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 classes in the school. Okay, so that's how you do those questions. You do have to think about it carefully before you do it. All right, so I'll put in a few little tips just in red pen to remind you. This one here, count all the dots. This one here, there's no gaps. The most common number of students, we're looking for the highest column. And the rest of them, I think, are self-explanatory. This one here, we're counting the dots within there, but it's along the same lines as those. So we're coming back in the next video to actually draw up a dot plot and answer a few questions for the second example.